Oh, so I don't forget. Hey y'all, it's Danielle from Black Owned Nashville and Black Business Boom, and I'm here with Miss Cathy Anderson, who is our industry expert in all things nonprofit. I'm excited to have you here, Cathy, because we got some great questions that we're going to tackle today. And as we're going through these questions, feel free to drop any additional questions you may have in the chat. We'll try to get to them today. If not, we'll get them next month. But
Yeah.
let's jump on in, Cathy. How are you
All right.
doing today?
I am doing well. Glad to be on the
Fantastic.
platform again.
Yes, happy to have you. And I tell you, going through this process of starting and growing a nonprofit is a lot. There's so many questions that folks have. I've gone through it myself, and it's just a lot. So I really
Mhm.
appreciate you for joining us because a lot of us have such community minded spirits. Like we really want to help folks. We have great ideas for how we want to help folks and we want to start these nonprofits, but we really don't know all of the things that go into doing that. So
Yeah.
we have some good questions that were submitted in advance. So let's just go ahead and jump on into the first one. And that one is, how do nonprofits pay their employees?
Okay, that's a good one. And I'm going to flat out say, just like you pay any employee. And then I will back up and give an example that I always give are hospitals. Many of us know there are private hospitals and there are the nonprofit hospitals. So most of the nonprofits, you're going to hear Baptist, you're going to hear a Saint something on it or Christian something. A lot of those are your nonprofits. There is no difference. We have to remember the commonality is the fact that it is a nonprofit corporation. So that corporation says you do nothing any different except for where that money goes at the end of the year, as well as you do not own a nonprofit. So that's the difference. Other than that, you should be paying just like you pay any W 2, and you should be cautious on when someone is considered a 1099 or W 2. And that's a whole nother subject.
All right, fantastic. That was great. Very, very helpful. And I love what you said there is that a nonprofit is a nonprofit corporation. It is a
Hmm.
corporation, it is a business.
Yeah.
And that's something that we get a little confused on, I think, a lot of times, that we think that it's even not supposed to make money.
Right.
As a nonprofit,
Right.
we somehow think that it shouldn't make money, and that's
Right.
not the case either. Like you should still be making money, and
Got to make a profit.
some of these nonprofits are making a lot of
A
money.
lot of
So
money.
exactly, I love it.
Hmm.
All right, so another good one is partnership ideas. So they're asking partnership ideas with other companies to provide resources for a nonprofit. So this
Hmm.
is something that I think is a really good topic because we sometimes see opportunities that say you have to be a nonprofit, or we may see
Hmm.
grant opportunities that say you have to be a for profit.
Hmm.
And many times you are like, okay, well, I'm a nonprofit. How do I go after this opportunity? And what I've learned is that you can partner with for profits, or as a for profit partner with nonprofits, to be able to go after some of these opportunities. So, can you
Hmm.
speak to us just a little bit about that, Cathy?
Yeah, that's another favorite of mine because we tend to, just as you said, we tend to think that, we want to shuffle around. Oh, I need to change to a nonprofit because that's what I see this grant. But I'm going to start with like a daycare, we'll say a daycare center,
Mhm.
and say they just have that portion where it's only for babies and toddlers, right? But then you come in and you have a program for, it could be after school or maybe a particular curriculum that you have written that can enhance that. Now, you don't need to work for them, but there's a lot of funding out there for education, right? So, in the best example I can think of, there's several in Nashville who are behavior specialists. And we know for our children, they want to title us and ADHD and all of that, where there's not a lot of programs in public school for our children, right?
Mhm.
So who best to serve is us. And I will say, if you have that specialty, then instead of you being an employee of them, that grant funding that may be from Department of Human Services or Department of Education, that nonprofit might be the daycare. and they would apply for that, but it is contingent. It's set up where what you put in that proposal, how you're going to pay, you're paying the specialist. That
Mhm.
works. That's no different for someone that speaks. If you speak and you have that special area where it's domestic violence, there's a lot of domestic violence programs out here, and you're a counselor, then you don't need a nonprofit because you're a counselor, but you're going to provide your service to that nonprofit. And what happens is both of you need to have the company name and the organization's name when you apply for that grant. It will come through that nonprofit. This is where I'll say some people get a little tricky on this. You don't take anyone's word for it. You have your curriculum down there, you have your proprietary information inside of that grant. So all funding has to go toward however you say you're going to spend it. Usually only about 30% is allowed for what they call admin. So that person who sponsors, they are the reporting agency. That nonprofit reports. So if they say within a year you have to, or sometimes quarterly, you have to give a report, that means that if you're the educator or that facilitator of that program, you're going to give that to the nonprofit for them to be able to submit. Every single penny has to be accounted for. And any money used outside of what's stated, someone has to answer for that, right? So you don't worry about someone taking money from you, or they got that nonprofit got the money and didn't give it to you. But at the same time, you want to have those MOUs, that memorandum of understanding, and that should be submitted as well with that grant. You want to show that partnership. So I don't know how to make it. I could talk on and on about partnerships because I
No,
think
this
it's
is
needed.
this is really great because it's
Mhm,
something that, as a for-profit business owner, I
mhm,
didn't realize, so I know if I didn't
mhm,
know this and I've been a business owner for 10 years and it was
mhm,
8 years in that I learned that, hey, if I see an opportunity
mhm,
and it says you need to be a nonprofit, that I can
mhm,
partner with a nonprofit and have them write
mhm,
me into the grant. Like I
mhm,
didn't know that. So I think it's really important for folks to understand that and understand that, like you said, it's not necessary for you to be flip flopping and being like, oh, we need to be a
mhm.
nonprofit.
Right.
It may come down to you finding good nonprofit partners in the event that there is a grant that is in line with what you can do. Uh,
Mhm,
and you can work with that nonprofit to do so. There, and even without, if we're not talking about grants, because we've come down to a situation where last year we had a corporation that wanted to give Black business owners free websites, and
mm,
we're not a nonprofit. And so and they were like, we have to write the check to a nonprofit, and
mhm,
so we were able to go out and partner with a nonprofit, tell them, hey, this is in line with your mission as well.
mhm,
They're going
mhm.
to write you the check. You're going to take a percentage, for your operating cost or whatever, and then
Right.
you're going to pay us to do the websites for those business owners. So there are
Absolutely.
ways that you can structure these things, so that they're
Mhm,
beneficial for everyone as
mhm.
well. So I think it's a really good topic, and that was a really great question. We have
Yeah.
a couple more in the chat I'm going to get
Okay.
to before we wrap up. Someone says, I build websites and many nonprofits reach out for me to build theirs. How do you suggest I or anyone providing a service explain to them that they still need to pay us? I do give discounts to them, but many get very aggressive about wanting in-kind work all
Mhm.
the time. That's an interesting question.
And that
So I
happens
was
a
like,
lot. That happens a lot. And I want to give an example of a janitorial service or something. You're not going to pay them less because you're a nonprofit. That hospital, a lot of times, paid more. They pay more money for nurses because they know the money is not going between stakeholders, it's going back into the organization. So in that case, there's one well known organization that they only give money for marketing and web development. So for the nonprofit, they should be seeking grants called capacity building.
Mhm.
You should also do fundraising. So your fundraising and your capacity building type grants will take care of those services that you are in need of.
Mm,
We just kind of back to partnerships. I know we have Entrepreneur Center here. We have Pathway Lending. Both of those are somewhat types of nonprofit organizations, but during COVID, they understood that we were considered underserved, the disparity of just not being on that same level when it comes to business. So there were certain cohorts that were only for people of color that were designated for that. So the money that was coming through, they took that could only be spent for people of color. So we got photo shoots, we got, some people got websites, or you got attorneys to pay for a
Mhm.
lower price. But the attorneys got their fee, but it was specific, it was paid by another grant
Yeah.
that could pay them. So we have to, as nonprofit leaders, do our due diligence to make sure at the same time we're raising money, we're also going after funds or grants that can pay for those kinds of services. And sometimes, hard one here, maybe you shouldn't start a nonprofit, because at the end of the day, the nonprofit is for, and I will say this over and over again, was designed for people with money and or influence. That meant that they were most time they were retirees, they had their,
Mhm.
they were in people in the society. They could bring back those movers and shakers. That's where those galas come from. That's where those high society events. That's different than your community events. But you should be doing your budget, because web design is only a one-time payment, and whatever your operations are currently, you know, start with students. But
Yeah.
don't
Build
miss
it
that
yourself.
market.
Yeah. I mean it, but
Yeah,
like to expect that somebody's gonna do it for free because you're a
no.
nonprofit is not
Mm-mm,
like that doesn't
mm-mm,
make good sense. Like
mm-mm.
if
It
we're
does
being
not.
honest, that just doesn't line up with what's being sensible,
Mm.
as a business owner. And again, a nonprofit leader is in essence a business owner. You
It's a
can't
business
own a
owner.
nonprofit, but you are running a corporation, and so
Absolutely.
it costs money to do
Yeah.
business of any kind.
And
So,
then taking advantage of the fact that the difference is you can go ask for money and it's written off. I mean, you
mhm,
can ask for money just for your organization, and you choose to do how you want to with it. But if we don't have budgets, we don't have proposals to show someone the whole story, the whole dream, then it's like you're always begging.
yep. And I think that that's a great point because it makes more sense for you to go out and ask a donor to donate money for you to get
Mhm,
a website and be able to pay the the actual web
mhm.
developer than it does to ask another small business owner to
Right.
give you services, right? And so there's so many folks out here that are looking for a tax write-off. They
It is.
especially, you get the end of the year, folks are like giving
Mhm,
away money because they're
mhm,
like, we need to get rid of some of this money. And so if you can catch somebody at the end of their fiscal year, they may
yeah,
just give you a $500 or $1,000 just as so that they can get that write off.
right.
So it makes more sense to go in that direction than it
Mhm.
does to ask a small business owner to provide free services. So
It does.
I love it.
Yeah.
Last question. So
Mhm,
someone just received their 501c3 status and they
mhm.
want to know what other qualifications are needed to be eligible for local, state, and federal grants.
Depending upon state they're in. If they're in Tennessee, we have the charitable solicitations. Is an act, actually. It's something that was put in place. So probably about 90% of the states have it, but you want to make sure you're registered there to even be able to raise funds legally.
Mhm.
So that's really important. But other than that, it's just free for all. You need to be able to sell that vision and just get the money. When you think of any corporation, we're talking about web design, go after the large ones. You can go look that up and find out who are the big corporations that do websites. That might be the company that you go to. You can ask if you think of any major corporation. You don't have to just go by the ones we all know: Walmart,
Mhm.
Honda, Toyota, all the ones. We don't have to keep doing those over and over. Think about large organizations that make millions or billions of dollars. They all have a community give back, including our local banks. So it's called Just Ask. You have to structure your organization. Even if you have volunteers, you have to remember you have to retain donors, you have to get new donors, and then you have someone that maybe is just going after the corporate part of it, the grants or what have you. But that has to be done simultaneously. So you have to be a great leader
Yeah, it's a
to
lot of things.
sell your dream and pull them in to do what you're doing. Because at the end of the day, everybody should be getting paid for the work they're doing, including yourself in a position.
And I think what is important that I have had calls with folks that have nonprofit organizations. They
Mhm,
are asking for help with marketing. They need to do better social media. They want to have a website, all these things. And I ask for their mission, vision, values, and program descriptions,
mhm.
and they don't have that. And
Right.
so I think a lot of times we get ahead of ourselves with asking about how do I go get grants, and
Mhm,
we don't really have the basics down on paper. We
mhm,
can't really communicate what the mission is, what the vision is, what the values of the organization are,
mhm,
what programs are we do we have or want to have, and what the budgets are for those
mhm,
programs. So I mean,
mhm,
I would really highly suggest that anyone that has an organization or thinks they want to have one, that you start there with really
mhm,
getting down on paper, what is this organization, who will you serve, how will you serve them,
mhm,
what is your annual budget. That's one thing Cathy has really pushed, is knowing your budget. How much does it cost for you to run a program? Like if
mhm,
you are doing this program twice a year, how much does that cost you? How much do you want to get paid? There's so many things. And so when you go to apply for grants, they want to know all of that as well. So
yeah.
yeah, so getting the basics down on paper, very, very important. Just like you would with a for-profit business, you should know your mission, vision, and values, and you should be
Mhm.
able to eloquently explain to someone what you do and how you do it. So same thing with a nonprofit
It is.
corporation.
It is. Yep.
Wonderful. Well, I think we got most of the questions today, but if
Okay.
not, we'll catch them for next time. And again,
Yep.
if anyone has any questions, drop them in the chat and we'll make sure we get them next time. Cathy and I are together next month. Thank you
Mhm.
so much, Cathy.
Thank you. It's my
I
pleasure.
appreciate you so much for joining us. And again, you have just been so helpful for me and for everyone else just trying to get these nonprofits going. And someone lastly wants to know, how do they reach you, Miss
Bye.
Cathy?
Well, of course, I'm on Facebook, so you always can inbox me. Um, the best way, if you have a nonprofit set up, you go to www.nonprofithelpneeded.com. If before you even want to talk to me, and there's like a little checklist to find out what you need to start this nonprofit, I have that set up under iamgrantready.com.
All right. So nonprofithelpneeded.com, as well as iamgrantready.com. That's,
Yes.
go and check that one out. It's a good one. All right. And I dropped them all in the chat so
Okay.
that
I said, other than that, DM me and we'll give you direction that way.
Cathy Anderson on Facebook, I'll make
Yeah.
sure she's tagged. All right. Thank you so much,
All
Cathy.
right.
I
It's
appreciate
been a
you.
pleasure again.
Thanks for tuning in, everyone. Have a great day.
Bye, y'all.
Bye.